Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. This video is about the importance of deterrence and balance of power for meaningful and pragmatic coexistence for managing strategic competition without conflict in a Sino-Indian setting. This is about a talk which I gave to officers who are currently posted and deployed in Arunachal Pradesh. It covers the entire gamut of the importance of deterrence and balance of power in the Sino-Indian context, and it clarifies a lot of questions which a lot of my viewers have been asking me at various points of time. Those of you who are interested, please go through this long video patiently. If needed, see it in parts. Should you have any questions thereafter, you can always ask me during any one of the open hour sessions which I have, and I'll be more than happy to clarify them. Thank you and happy viewing. Today we're going to talk of the importance of deterrence and balance of power for peaceful and pragmatic coexistence for managing strategic competition without conflict. It's a pretty long heading, but it consists of two major issues. One is balance of power, and the other is deterrence. If you understand and go over what are the ingredients of the balance of power and deterrence in the Sino-Indian context and in the larger global context, the other issue of coexistence for managing strategic competition without conflict is an outflow, right? But having said this, let me tell you, despite all this deterrence and balance of power, there is always a possibility that conflict can, erupt. Okay, these days we are living in an era where you will not have cold peace or hot war. Okay, what you're going to have is cold war or hot peace. Okay, one of the two. Many people today feel that a cold war is on at a global level, and in the local level, right, between any two countries, and especially between India and China, we are in a state of hot peace. Okay, now this is a cartoon given out by South China Morning Post, in which they shown President Biden, Prime Minister Modi, President Putin, and Xi Jinping. And they're at the four corners of the world tearing it apart. But that actually set me thinking. I saw this article about 3 months back in which this cartoon came up, and it set me thinking. And if the Chinese are looking at it this way, why are we not looking at it this way? Okay. So you're always already somewhere in the balance of power. And now if you look at it, if you translate this into a matrix, today the balance of power is in a matrix as I've shown to you on the view file. What does it show? In this quadrilateral, you have India and India and USA on the opposite ends, and there's an attraction between them. Where China and US are on the other ends of the quadrilateral, and there's an attraction along the diagonal. As far look at it from the Indian point of view, you are attracted towards Russia, you are attracted towards USA, but you have a repulsion towards China. Look at it from the Chinese point of view, they have a problem, they are only attracted towards the USA. The other two, they are in a state of repulsion. And USSR has okay equations with us and China, but it has problems with USA. It's all well known. Okay, and USA, right, is absolutely against China and USSR, and there's a clear attraction between India and USA. So this is the matrix which is playing out globally today, and these are the four big heavyweights which are aligned the way they are. And this is pulling, this depending on how the seasons change, this quadrilateral changes, in some manner. But so far, it has not snapped. Okay. Now, let me put it to you in a slightly different manner. This was something of a hot topic during the time when Prime Minister Modi went to USA. And at that time, we analyzed this matrix, country by country, the India-China matrix, India-Russia matrix, the India-USA matrix, and everyone with very eminent people, with Brigadier Arun Saigal, who is in a strategic think tank in Delhi, the Delhi Policy Group, then with General Vinod Bhatia, who was our DGMO, okay, and then he headed St. George also. And then, of course, General Ahuja, General Anil Ahuja, who incidentally was GOC 5 Mountain Dew and was also GOC 4 Corps. Okay, and notwithstanding that, he's also a gunner like me, and we were Colonel Commandants of the Regiment of Artillery together. He's just 6 months senior to me. And we analyzed this in a great framework. And this entire analysis, there are 5 videos available on my YouTube channel, Gunner Shot. And for those of you who are listening to me for the first time, I have my own channel called the Gunner Shot, which is all about defense and strategic affairs. And I devote a lot of time to China, right? And I devote 60% of my talks and articles are on China. Even in my website called Gunner Shot, I've written a lot about China. So it would be good for all you youngsters, right, who are sitting just this side of the LAC, to have a look at it. Have a look at some of these videos, because most of the things which you grapple are there theoretically. The difference in what I do, what I speak and what others speak, is that I transpose whatever our experience on ground to theory. So I theorize what is there on ground. That's the whole story. Okay. And it will be very useful, especially for people who are doing staff college or who are aspiring for it. Or for that matter, anyone, in fact, right up to your GOC. Okay. After all, one of your GOCs itself has been with me in this whole discussion. Okay. Now, we have to understand where India is in this entire matrix. And this will comes from the fact that the way India is growing. And this is a figure, the analysis from the Japan Council of Economic Research, which says that around 2025, India will cross Japan's GDP and become the third, heaviest economy in the world. Why have I chosen Japan? I have chosen Japan because that's the most, stable way of looking at it, and probably unpartisan, without any partisan view. It's not the West who look down upon us or someone who's trying to prop us up. Okay. At the same time, imagine 2030 paper, written by the douchebag. It says that the Indian economy is likely to touch 7 trillion by 2030. Okay. And Morgan Stanley states that India is on track to become the world's third largest economy by 2027. So what we are seeing is a transition. You already had about $3.75 trillion today. And our economy is growing at the rate anything between 6 to 7% every quarter. And we slowly are becoming the engine of growth for the world. The day you touch $5 trillion, you're a heavyweight. And when you touch $7 to $10 trillion, and that's not far away. That will happen in my lifetime, not in your lifetime. You don't have to wait for that. Okay. I've seen this transition of our Indian economy from when it was not even $250 billion to now so much. Okay. At the time when we didn't know when our next ship of food grain was getting offloaded from USA. That's the time I've lived through. But you people are going to come in at a time when India is a big power. It's already a big power. Okay. Now, you have to also understand why I'm talking all this is you have to understand where India is. If you look at it in the current thing, you are a heavyweight, but tomorrow you're going to be a heavier weight. And you have to change the way we think about the global balance of power and deterrence to understand where you're going and how you have to deal with China. That's the most important thing. All of us in the army, right, especially units and formations along the LAC, have to understand China psychologically and politically. Military is the next, the least important thing. If you understand that Chinky Bugger's psychology and his politics, the rest everything falls in line. Okay, what I'm going to tell you is something which everyone knows, but no one focuses on it. Japan, Germany, and China, in the last century, especially Japan and Germany, at the at the end of the Second World War, were broken powers. Completely, their economy was shattered, but they were rebuilt with the help of USA. China's economy was also rebuilt with the help of USA from the 70s, 72, when Nixon went to meet Mao. Okay. All three of these powers, all three of these nations were aided powers. They were aided by the West to resurrect their economy. They had a tremendous peace dividend. These countries, Japan and Germany, have not fought for the past 80 years. China has not fought since 1979. They're all chut-put cases. There's something called a peace dividend. And if nations are in peace, they grow. These countries have had it. But on the other hand, India has had to fight through natural disasters, wars, and international sanctions. We've had tremendous problems in life. Okay, we were an opposed economy. I remember the time when, I was in DRDL, and just around the time when I was a major, before I went for staff college. This is 88 I'm talking of, before I came to FIDEM also. We were under MTCR. We didn't know we didn't have the, parts and components and technology, or we had the technology, we knew how to do it, but we couldn't put the hardware together for flying our Prithvi and Agni missiles because we were under sanctions and no one would give us anything. Okay, right. Now, from there, we have come back. Against all odds, we have now reached the time when we are the fifth largest economy and knocking on the doors very fast to become the third largest economy. And probably at some point of time, we might even be the second largest economy. That means you're a heavyweight. You're a real heavyweight. Okay? And let me tell you, I've also been through the time when we didn't have the Bofors. Our biggest gun was the 130 mm, and today you have not only Bofors, you have M777, you have Sharang, you have attacks, and you have Vajra, and what have you. We have something which we have never had before, and this is all a product of the growth of our national strength. Okay, and as you become a great power, you're part of the balance matrix, global power, and the matrix which I showed you earlier. And as you become a great power, you will have the capacity to steer, influence, and shape global events. Already, India is doing that. And without India, many global issues cannot be resolved. And in fact, at this point of time, if you see, without India, the virus could not have been eradicated, the pandemic, COVID, because our contribution in terms of vaccines was huge. Many countries just depended on us, notwithstanding what many people said. And at this point of time, I might like to tell you that China failed. Despite a lot of talk, China failed. We could steer the globe out of the virus. And this is not something which I'm saying. This is something which Mr. Mike Ryan, who's one of the executive presidents of WHO, who said this. And he said this before, just on the onset of pandemic, that he foresees the time when India will lead the world out of the pandemic. And it happened. That's what India is all about, and that's how people look at India. Most of us who stay within India don't believe in ourselves the way we are supposed to believe. Okay, okay. Now let me get back to this matrix. If you look at it in this matrix, USA is without doubt the dominant power. Russia is the weakened power. Okay, China is the aspiring power but in decline. Why in decline? Because its economy has gone to tatters and it's not going to recover. And then its its population is in a terminal decline. The rate of fall of its population is going to undercut Chinese growth. Yeah, it will remain a big economy, but it's going to be a stagnant or a receding economy. And India as a power is a growing power emerging from reticence. Okay. Now, the problem is here in this whole story is that between China and India, that's a power which is in decline. You are a growing power. Are you in the danger of entering a Thucydides trap? What is a Thucydides trap? That the trap is that a growing power threatens the grown power, and the other power tries to get into a war, and through conflict uh, undercut the growing power. That's the case with China and India as things are standing or going about. And that's also the case between China and USA. For long, China has been trying to displace USA as the dominant power. So there's a trap there. And there's another likelihood of a trap between India and China as the differential between both these countries reduce. Okay. At this point of time, I'd like to say you'll find a lot of comparison between India and China. That China has got an economy of 17 trillion, India is only 4 trillion. What are we talking of? I'd like to put across to all you guys a few things. First, China has a lot of dead economy which people don't talk. Dead economy in the sense they've invested a lot of money in their infrastructure and housing, which they don't need, and that money is just standing in ghost cities. So that's dead economy. That economy is no use to man or beast, right? So there's no point in talking of that differential in economic terms. And in military terms, we have to understand economies don't fight battles. It is people and armies who fight battles or forces who fight battles. And in a given sector, whether it's a LAC or anywhere else or wherever, you can only put that many forces on ground. If you put more forces on ground, you don't get more results. It's only commitment of more troops on the ground without any dividend, right? So when you look at it from that point of view, you're almost at parity. And it is fallacy. Let me tell you, it's a fallacy to think that China has got tremendous economic, stamina and logistics stamina where you don't have. I'm not one who believes so. And this is for the simple reason that wars tomorrow are not going, like I told you, that business of hot peace and cold war. It's never going to be hot war. It can't be because both the countries can't afford it. Right. Now, let me spend a couple of minutes on, the India-USA relationship in the balance of power, right? This is important. Okay. At the turn of the century, as when I just finished higher command, and we were used to discuss, and this was the time the India-US relations started increasing, and this was based on a lot of dialogue between Stroke Talbot and late Jaswant Singh, right? And this was carried forward by Mr. Manmohan Singh and President Obama at a higher level. And that was when President Obama had said the US-Indian ties are a defining partnership for the 21st century. And that has now proven, irrespective of which party has been in power, either in USA or in India, this relationship is growing. Now, what are the fundamentals and things when you look at the balance of power matrix in this whole story? There is no doubt USA wants to continue to dominate the world and it will not give up. Okay. But to do that, it needs India. Without India, it can't. It cannot contain India. It cannot contain China without India. That's the whole story of this global power matrix which is emerging. Now, on its own, India can handle China in its present format. On that, I've never had a doubt. Whatever happened in Eastern Ladakh, Kailash Ranges, Galwan, or in Yangtze last year in your sector, right? We've given the Chinese a good spanking. We can handle them. But the growth of India is not about just the growth of our military. It's a rise of India as a global power. To do that, we need USA as a strategic partner. But we cannot become its ally. So once you are a strategic partner to USA, and we've been so for the past 20 years, right? And if the strategic partnership strengthens and grows along the trajectory which it has grown for the past 20 years, okay, already you see a lot of limitations in terms of peace, right? That is what you wanted to say. Strategic management and management of conflict. That second part of this dialogue which we are having, right? So one part of peace, or rather avoiding conflict, comes from this. The other part is, of course, China. But then you also have to understand, ever since the virus started, a lot of countries are looking towards India, Israel, Japan, or all our neighbors, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives, even Myanmar, Middle East. Middle East is looking at India, and you cannot imagine the ways it is. It wants to invest in India. It wants to invest in Kashmir, right? It has told Pakistan clearly to lay off Kashmir. Even China wants to come to us, right? At every stage for the past 5 to 6 months, they've all saying, let's normalize our relations. But then the problem with China is they want to normalize relations on their terms. Russia. Of course, Russia couldn't have lasted the Ukraine war without India. And everyone in the West wants to look at India. So what has happened in the past 3 to 4 years, ever since the onset of the pandemic? Before this, if you see Samuel Huntington's theory, right, he said that India is a swing state. Whichever side India swings, that will be the heaviest side. But today, India has changed from being a swing state to a balancing power in global affairs. You balance powers. Your equations with Russia and USA balances China out. Okay, they can't just get up one fine morning and start something funny, and they'll not only get it on their nose from us, they will also have a big problem in global power equations. Okay, and in the IOR, as our economy strengthens, we will become a controlling power. We will control the Indian Ocean region. We are already the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region, and we are well on our way to control the Indian Ocean region. Okay, we've already got the 2 aircraft carriers. The moment the 3rd aircraft carrier comes in and our submarine fleet increases and our aircraft program takes off, which will happen, right? Notwithstanding daily perturbations, over a period of time, it will happen. You will see that India will have complete control, of course, with USA over the Indian Ocean region. So you're going to go into a state where you have to balance out. And once that state is reached, you will find that the scope for conflict starts reducing. Okay. Now, besides this, what other things have, contributed to this whole story? The Ukraine war and the pandemic have brought to fore that three things: food, energy, and resources are finite, inadequate, and at risk. Right? Now, in this, I want to highlight India is food surplus. Today, a lot of people look at India for food, and China has emerged as a food insecure nation. Energy and resources, we are deficient, right? That will always be a problem for us. But then globally, we have to understand in the larger thing, it is finite, inadequate, and at risk. Let me tell you, this trip which we have undertaken to moon via Chandrayaan and this Aditya launch towards the sun is all about energy and resources. Tomorrow's superpowers are those who have the capability of meeting their own energy and resources and probably be surplus at it. And this next step, the next generation, this will be when probably one of you are speaking like this, as I'm doing, to the next generation in Five Mountain Dew. Okay, that's when we would probably be tapping into space-based energy. And today there are only 4 nations who can tap space-based energy. And that is India, USA, Russia, and China. And that is this global power matrix which I'm talking of. And these 4, I would predict, this is my view, and it is not only my view, others are shy of saying it, but I say it up front, are the future superpowers. We are knocking on the door of being a superpower. Okay. Now, weaponization of these essentials is changing the contours of great power competition. That's what I just spoke of. You already food surplus, right? In that balance on the global power matrix, it is China which doesn't have food. In fact, China doesn't have food, it doesn't have energy, it doesn't have resources either. That's another reason why I keep postulating that China is a country in decline. Okay. And like I said, the last thing which I keep repeating, India is a central and balancing power in the world order. India has to believe in itself to be this. We are still, saying, यार हम कैसे हो सकते हैं ऐसे? हम तो बेवकूफ हैं. And this is for many reasons, but then it's one of the big reasons is we don't know ourselves. I mean, it's something like an elephant doesn't know its own strength. Okay, now let's look at this matrix again, this global power matrix, and see, and I'll now focus on China and India. The India-China equations will be strained for a long time to come. Have no doubts as to why. I'll touch upon it a little later. Now, we will remain a global strategic partner of both Russia and USA. It will not change. The question is, can India-US partnership balance China for peace and progress? And similarly, can India and Russia partnership balance China out? That's the challenge in front of us. So far, we have succeeded to a limit. But as our economy keeps strengthening, you will come to a stage where there will be a balance of power between China and India. And already China thinks so. We don't believe it, but China thinks so. I've shown you the first slide which I showed you is a cartoon, but I'll come to it in a little later and I'll see how they think so. Okay. The future of India-China relations is the crux of the whole deal. And how it's impacting our strategic space is something which we have to really ponder about. Okay. Now let's look at China. China has certain internal dimensions. Okay, there are tensions and distress with China. And within China, all this is based on their profound differences in the worldview, ideology, and regime legitimacy. Right? This little grammatic error, it is tensions and distress within China is based on profound differences in worldview, ideology, and regime legitimacy. Okay. Now, why regime legitimacy? The idea there is that, look, the Chinese have had a social compact with their population that you give us or your freedoms and we will give you prosperity, right? And their ideology is completely Marxist and Leninist and, of course, Maoist in nature. And their worldview is a Sinocentric worldview. So there's a huge difference. And that despite all this, their economy is going down. So there are tensions within China. Okay. Now, in the Chinese way of thinking, and everything, remember, anything you do with China, you must first look at it politically. What is the political outcome of anything? Even an incident like Yangtze, it's a small incident with huge political and strategic outcomes. It is not a matter of whether that fellow can take a rock or a boulder and sit on top of us. It is a matter of trying to teach us a lesson or put us in our place. Okay. Right? So, but as China thinks, in Chinese view, political competition is a raw struggle for power between groups or factions that inevitably ends in the eradication of one competitor. It is internally also that's the way China has grown. Mao finished off all his competitors. Deng Xiaoping finished off all his competitors. Now Xi Jinping is finishing off all his competitors. But then it's equally true externally. Now internally, all this competition, manifests in the form of purges, prison camps, and political murders. Now, as per Mao, political competition comes down to ni si wu ho, which is you live, I die. Sorry, you die, I live. And this ideology and this thinking is transferred to everyone. When you transfer it to everyone, it means in terms of India also, it's very clear. India dies, China lives. So we have to be clear that at the base, the Chinese and Indians, our ideologies don't match, or thinking doesn't match, or culture doesn't match. Okay. Now there's another major internal dimension of China, which is coming up every day. This is only worsening. The CCP, like I said, is worried about its legitimacy. It faces a slowing economy with alarmingly high youth unemployment, as well as a weakening of the unspoken bargain between the government and the people, which I did mention. You give me your freedom and I will give you prosperity. Right? Because of their ideological worldview, Xi Jinping and other top CCP leaders understand that any serious economic setback would further open the door to liberal ideas and pose an existential threat to their rule. This is critical. If events and things in China go bad, and if their existence is a threat, as the CCP and its grip on China will externalize. And that is the history. For those of you who do not know or not gone through history, China invaded India in 1962 when it was in the grip of the Great Leap Forward, and there was a great famine in China in which 35 million people died. In fact, it's 30 to 40 million people died. They didn't have food to eat, but they were invading us. So, notwithstanding whatever the Chinese economy or the internal state is, we must be careful about this fact that they can always go to war with us. And this is one dimension which we can never ignore. Okay, now there are a few constants of India-China relations. And these constants are not today's constants. These constants have evolved from the time we got independence in 1947 and the People's Republic of China came into existence in 1949. As per the Chinese view, the balance of power is between China, the Soviet Union, and the United States. India never mattered. Now, India is the wild card to be kept in check through persuasion or coercion from time to time. The psychological pressure on India constantly that China is a dominant power in Asia, and it has succeeded to a large extent in doing so. What's important? China views India as an unequal and untrustworthy, neighbor, and Pakistan is a strategic ally to keep India in check in South Asia, and this has been constant right from then. Okay, and you must know that Pakistan was one of the first countries to recognize PRC when it came into existence. Now, having said that, this is the view of Global Times. Global Times is the mouthpiece of the PLA, and it is a rabid anti-Indian mouthpiece, and it is not even not anti-Indian; it is also rabid anti-US. Okay, they recognize that the US and Indian interests in strengthening the strategic partnership is to balance USA. And they keep poking that the US is not bothered about India XYZ. But let me come to the operative bullet is the fourth bullet. You know, this is an article which came about 2-3 months back. If you see the fourth bullet, I've said India as a regional power that upholds strategic autonomy is unwilling to be a pawn of any major power and does not want its national interests to be held hostage. This was the first time in all my study of global times, they mentioned that India is a regional power. They started recognizing India as a regional power. What I showed you earlier was the traditional idea that we are nowhere in the global power matrix. But today they started talking that India is a regional power. Okay. No Asian security architecture or industrial chain can be constructed without China. That is their view. And they feel that India is attempting to upset this apple cart. He says the end result of balancing China. Who's balancing China? India is balancing China. Will be the loss of self-interest of the countries involved in the balance. They're worried because people are relocating from China to India. And India is the only country which has got it is an alternate in terms of manpower and space and scale to supplant China in global affairs, whether manufacturing, supply chains, anything. And last, he says the status of India and China in the world will depend on their respective attitudes towards embracing the world. Of course, in this article, if you read in the whole, he says India and China should get together, but on China's terms. That's how China behaves always. So the issue which you have to understand is that today China has started thinking of you differently. Yeah, gone are the times when it feels that it can ride roughshod over you. They feel that look, India has come of age, and we have come of age. Okay, this is an interesting thing. This is something which I coined. I was speaking one day to General Raj Shukla, who was the GOC&C art track. We were doing a program together on gunner shot only. And this came out of that. The first things which you have to look in this whole story of balance of power is India and China have great power ambitions. Both of us have. India is changing as much as China is. There are no two countries in the world which have changed so much in the past 25 years. China has changed very fast, and it's going to change faster. The only thing is the trajectory was going very fast up in the last 25 years. In the next 25 years, it's going to go down very fast. Whereas ours has been a sustained race. But change, the pace of change in both these countries is unprecedented. Hereafter, India's rise is at China's expense. This is something we have to understand. And all this will get factored into that global balance or imbalance. On one side, as you grow stronger, you start balancing. You get into balance of power. But as you rise, and since it is going to be at China's expense, you're going to go into the thing of, Cold War and hot peace. That paradigm won't change. The hot peace might get hotter. Okay, the next 25 years are important for both India and China to achieve their goals. This is the common logic and wisdom in thinking, which many people are thinking, and to a large extent, it's right. But I have a more radical view. I feel it's the next 10 years which are important for both India and China. India to achieve its goals, and China to be shown out as a country which has peaked out. In the next 10 years, either China makes it or it's broken. And that puts a lot of tension on China. Okay, this next point is unique. And this is a very, 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 very important point. There is no history in the world of two powers rising in close proximity. They've never risen. When USA and Great Britain were rising, they were far apart. USA and Russia, they were far apart in their rise. When the continental powers rose, they had wars. But such populous nations, the two most populous nations in the world with a boundary of 3,000 plus kilometers, never rose together. And China wants to be the undisputed regional leader. So there's a lot of back and forth. We want to rise, they want to rise, they want to subjugate us, we want to break out of it. At one level. At another level, they feel, okay, India has come off stage, we have to get to them. So there's a lot of that, the first matrix. Cold War and hot peace. We might transit ultimately from a state of hot peace into Cold War. And when we get into the thing of Cold War, it will all be about deterrence and balance of power. Armies are not going to fight. And if it fights, it will be a small battle. Already we have come to that. I'll talk about it a little later. Okay, what is the Chinese view? And this is based on their experience of 62. They feel cooperation achieved through the use of force is long-lasting, while that through compromise is fragile and short-term. They feel that they shouldn't make any compromise with India, and that what they, when they fought with 62 and taught us a lesson, it brought them a lot of peace and they got India out of their back. And whenever they've attempted to speak to India, it has been met with problems. That's their view. You can't stop it. In China, there are three schools of thought. And these three schools of thought are the connect. In fact, this slide, let me tell you, is the connect between what I spoke so far about balance of power to what I'm hereafter going to speak, which is deterrence. The hyper-nationalist school of thought says, teach India a lesson. That's the earlier slide which I showed you, this one. Okay? Cooperation through use of force is long-lasting, while that through compromise is fragile and short-term. This is the hyper-nationalist view. This was the dominant view in China till recently. So they say, teach India a lesson. Impose reputational costs on China, on India. Impose reputational costs on India. Throw India down. And that's what they tried in Eastern Ladakh. And they tried it in Eastern Ladakh at a time when we as a nation were probably underconfident for many reasons. 3 years back. But in doing so, what have they done? They have taught us that we can, face them square. Look at Galwan. And in Galwan, it's now beyond doubt they suffered more casualties than us, and that's never been publicized. And there's too much proof about it. And we outsmarted them in Kailash range. We had stopped them in Doklam, right? And then at Yangtze, we also taught them a lesson. And we forgotten in 1967 that we gave them a bloody nose. For a country which lost so much in 62 and 67, we just sorted them out in Nathula. If you read that battle, and all of it, you must read that battle, we've done hell of a lot. And also in 86 in Sundorongchu, where you people are today, we completely outflanked them. In the good old days, no one was deployed in the Tulungla axis. It was then in 1986, as a result of the Sundorongchu incident, that we went and occupied that. And it was a bold move. That was the first time when we outflanked the Chinese completely and took them by surprise. And we used air power to do so. At that time, now we are going back to 86. And I would suggest read these, what we have achieved. These two events I have analyzed in Gunner Shot along with General Kulkarni, who was also the LAC commander in Tawang, the brigade commander. I think 190 brigade or what, I don't know that. I think 190. Right, he was in charge of the complete LAC. He knows the LAC backwards, and he was also there as a young officer and a young major in 1986 in the Sungrongchu incident. We've analyzed the 67 and this 86 incident in one of my things. Have a look at it. It doesn't matter which armed service are you from. You're an Indian, you're an officer. It doesn't matter whether you got 6 months service or 60 years service. It doesn't matter a damn. But as Indians, all of you must know what happened then. And that's what we have put. And we gave these chaps a bloody nose. Right? So, their efforts at imposing reputational costs on us have been failing. So, this hyper-national school has, and mind you, despite all the aggression which China has shown on us, we have progressed. So, they're worried. Now, the second line of thought, and which was the dominant line of thought in between, was if China wants to work in the main strategic direction, that is dealing with the US challenge and getting equated with USA as the number one economy in the world, it needs to solve the problem on the secondary front, because they felt that the Indian front is a secondary front. If neglected, it will land China in a two-front challenge. And they don't want to be in a two-front situation. If you think India is in a two-front situation with India and Pakistan, Pakistan and China, just think about in China. China is also in a four-front situation, actually, as per them. If you look at their readings, they are in a four-front situation. They have a front against Korea, Japan. They have a front against Taiwan and USA. They have a front against India, and they have a front against the AUKUS in the Pacific. And that's what they think. And they at all costs, they want to avoid that. So there's a mix of deterrence and balance of power in this whole story. And that balances peace. That's why if they come too much this side and they get had on the other side, they're worried. And today, when we have this equation with USA through the Quad and the strategic partnership, they're worried. Because it is India and USA together outmatch China strategically and militarily. So the second school of thought has been grappling with this problem. If I go one side, from the other side, I'll get hit. Now the third is the rationalist school. Today, it is the rationalist school which is in operation. It talks of the importance of relations with India second only to the US. And as days go by, this will get equated. They feel that the best strategy is to buy time while continuously maintaining pressure and seeking bilateral cooperation. So they're going to maintain pressure on the LAC while continuously saying we'll cooperate, increase trade, and get our situation back to normal as in the days before 2017-18. Or rather before Xi Jinping era. In fact, the trajectory of India-China conflict, or rather whatever you call it, right, has taken off ever since this fellow Xi Jinping has come into power. So today you have this rationalist school, in play. And the balance of power will get now connected to deterrence. Because this fellow, if he's going to, maintain pressure on us on the LAC, we need to deter him from adventures. How do you do it? We'll talk of deterrence now. What is deterrence? Deterrence is the practice of discouraging or restraining an adversary from taking unwanted actions. Before he does anything, You tell him, you do this, I'll do this. Okay, it involves an effort to stop or prevent an action. Okay, you can head it off or you just stop him cold. It could be active or reactive. No, there's this word you'll use. You'll see this word coming up called compellence. It is compellence is an effort to force an actor to do something. That means you are proactively doing something to him by which he has to react and behave accordingly. You force him, you compel him to act in a particular manner and abandon a course. So you compel him. Compellence is an extreme form of deterrence, right? I just thought, at this outset itself, I'll talk about, I'll give you the fine difference between deterrence and compellence. Deterrence could be completely defensive, whereas compellence is proactive and aggressive. And hereafter, I'll not talk of compellence, I will talk of deterrence only. Okay, what are the types of deterrence which are in operation? Right? You have nuclear deterrence, you have conventional deterrence, it could be economic, it could be political or geopolitical. And this geopolitical deterrence could be through alliances with or against. You could have two, like India and USA as a partnership could be against China or with each other, right? So it could be two ways. Or Pakistan and China are an alliance against India. So that's the way it plays. It could be diplomatic deterrence, right? At the UN and world bodies and all, because the world institutions are pretty strong and you can do a lot of things in many places, including the UN. Okay, then it could be through information and surveillance. It could be sanctions and denial regimes. You see the sanctions and denial regimes in operation in Ukraine. In fact, even we have used it. When in 2020, the Eastern Ladakh incident happened, we, virtually told all their companies to get out of India. We banned all their apps. And the way we banned apps, no one else in the world has done it. Even Huawei, which we just threw out, and TikTok are still operational in many parts of the world, including USA. Okay, right. And then, of course, you have an asymmetric option of deterrence. And that's what Pakistan has been doing with us. And maybe it's time for us to also start thinking of asymmetric options to enforce deterrence on China. Right. Now, you'll hear this, not discussed, but it is there. There's something called the stability-instability paradigm of nuclear deterrence. See, the normal thinking is when there are two nuclear powers, there can't be war, which is right to a certain extent. But what happened is in the stability-instability, nuclear deterrence provides stability at the top by preventing large-scale wars. You can't escalate war to a level where it results in a nuclear catastrophe. And this is largely in the context of war between two nuclear powers. Why I'm going in this direction is our problems are only with two nuclear powers, and we have to operate in this scenario. Okay, so there is stability in the top, whereas there will be no war of the scale at which it used to happen. You'll never have a 62 repeating or 71 repeating. But while there is stability at the top, there is instability at the bottom because a window of opportunity opens up for small scale, a bit local level conflict. And this we have seen. In fact, at one end of this threshold of conflict, right, the window of conflict is what happened in Kargil, and the other end is small incidents like Yangtze. Right? They represent the likely extremities of conflict threshold in the Sino-Indian context. And maybe even lesser, because in the past 20 years, we have not fired even small arms. Maybe one out round has been fired. Like that incident in Tulungla itself, where four Assam Rifle boys were ambushed by PLA. And that was by mistake they admitted it. And then some rounds were fired, in the Kailash trades. But otherwise, there's been no firing. So the threshold levels are pretty low. But it doesn't mean there's no conflict. So you'll have lower level conflict which have reputational costs. If you lose that conflict, there'll be reputational costs involved on it. Look, a lot of people talk of them chalk and Depsang and all that. What is the amount of territory you lost? Already 5-6 kilometers. Even if you don't have it, it doesn't matter. But reputation is at stake. The Indian reputation is at stake. So is the Chinese reputation if you throw them out. When we did the Kailash range operation, their reputation came at stake. When we kicked them at Yangtze, their reputation came at stake. That's the thing which you have to understand. So, we are going to see a condition where the window at the lower level has opened up. And this window is a pretty imaginative window. And this is a window, this is a tactical window. The manifestation is tactical in nature. This is going to be led by platoon commanders, company commanders, battalion commanders, and maybe brigade commanders. But the effect will be at strategic and geostrategic level. All actions, big outcomes, and big repercussions. And that is why today I'm very glad that this cadre is being conducted and all young officers, many of you are in units are seeing this. You have to understand war in a far different paradigm than what we went through. Okay. Now, what are the forms of deterrence? This is something which you need to understand. Deterrence could be denial or punishment, direct or extended, general or immediate, local, or it could be wider, narrow or broad, contact or non-contact. I'll go over each of this so that you understand this matrix and how it operates. Okay, let's look at deterrence by denial. These two are the main forms of deterrence which you have to understand well. Now, deterrence by denial involves denying an adversary the ability to achieve its military and political objectives. If China tomorrow wants to come and do a land grab at Yangtze or Bumla or Kenzemane or Hatungla or wherever, whichever some rock, okay, you have to have the capability to deny him to do that because he can't do anything much more. It could be through preemptive aggression. You might do a QPQ. And he should know that you're going to do a QPQ. If you do a QPQ, it doesn't matter. It's a rock versus a rock. As it is, the Sundramchu resulted in us holding most of the heights on the LAC. And the important places on the LAC. He's got very little foothold on the LAC. Okay. It also involves deploying sufficient local military forces or alter force ratios to defeat an attack. You either hold the picket strong at battalion level or at this thing. If you don't have this wherewithal and you don't have the strength, have adequate reserves. And that's what happened in Yangtze. As I could understand it. I mean, I don't know, I was not there. But from what I've heard, what I've known from my friends and what we got from newspapers and all, when we came to know that the Chinese are doing something, reinforcements were rushed up. You altered the force balance out there. You were in a position of strength. And you hammered them. Unfortunately, we were not so in Galwan when the whole thing started. But when we went to Kailash, we did the trick, ulta. So you have to alter the force ratios. You also have to alter the threat ratios. Because we did this in Pangong So when we went at the heights on Finger 4 and occupied the Finger 4, because from the top of those Anila heights, if you look back, you can see far into the depth of Chinese beyond Sirijap, and that unnerved them. Okay, you can confront a potential aggressor with risk of catastrophic loss, right? And pure, you say you do something, and I will just annihilate you. and you demonstrate the ability to cause harm to him and cause loss to him. And of course, you can deny use of ground through firepower. This is something which I want to explain, which many of us don't understand in the Sino-Indian context. See, if China has to mount a major attack on India, it has to come and deploy the majority of its firepower along the eastern and western express highways. You know, that area along the Brahmaputra, when you see across the LAC. And we're talking of Sonazong and that line, right? To Ningchi, that line. Okay. If you have the capability of controlling that area through long range vectors and surveillance, and he knows about it, he can't deploy there. So you deny him deployment space and depth. If you deny him deployment space and depth, and if you put his logistics under threat, okay, he's done. He can't take any offensive. So that is deterrence. And for that, you need to have long range vectors in plenty. Why am I talking all this? Because I'm in the business of developing them for the economy. Okay, and that I'm doing at IIT, and it's not a state secret because I've written about it openly. Let me also inform you, if all goes well, I should be able to develop a Pinaka kind of a weapon system, or even Pinaka with extended range. Already it has a range of about 80 odd kilometers. If I can extend the range to 250 kilometers, Pinaka, wherever you take Pinaka, many places I'm sure you can take Pinaka these days, right? Or even a grad extended range, if you can reach 100 to 200 kilometers in depth with the kind of surveillance and network you put together. You deny him that space for deployment, and the day you deny him that, you deter him. But deterrence by denial, by nature, is defensive. Okay, what is deterrence by punishment? Now, that's the threat to impose unacceptable costs by destruction of an adversary's strategy and high-value targets. When you say deterrence by punishment, you threaten severe penalties, whether nuclear escalation, severe economic sanctions, or diplomatic isolation. And we've been using this business of diplomatic isolation against China. And with Pakistan, you put into place deterrence by punishment. That you try anything, we'll destroy you. So far, the balance of military balance is that we have been using deterrence by punishment against Pakistan and largely deterrence by denial against China. And I think we're going to go slowly to a time where we're going to be deterrence by punishment against China also. Now, penalties are connected to the local fight. Either it could be sectoral or the wider world. Okay, you could also say, when you say deterrence by punishment, okay, you do something here, I'll do something somewhere else, in some other sector. I'll widen the whole story. And I'll impose punishment on you at a place of time of my choosing. Right. The focus of deterrence is not the direct defense of the contested commitment, but threat of wider punishment that could raise the cost of an attack. So he might come with a small idea, but you make it larger. You should be prepared for it. Right? It is offensive by nature and it's escalatory by nature. That's why people find it difficult to absorb it. Politicians are scared of this. Politically, it is difficult to get into an escalatory situation where you might, especially it is, they're worried, but that we might end up in a nuclear situation. And there's another issue which we all must understand. It's easy to get into war, but how do you get out of it? In the time when Kargil thing took place, we were all CEOs and we wanted to say, go and sort out Pakistan. All this nonsense was going on. Deterrence by punishment was fully in effect. Okay. And someone asked our Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, so why don't you go and attack Pakistan and sort it out? His answer was, yeah, I'll go and attack Pakistan. But how do I end this war? What is the exit policy for me? Where do I cut off what I call punishing Pakistan? What if it goes into a nuclear catastrophe? So, this deterrence by punishment has a link with nuclear deterrence and something which you have to understand. So, it's not easy. The easier thing is deterrence by denial. Okay. Right. The next thing is direct deterrence. Okay. Now, direct deterrence and extended deterrence. What is the difference between the two? Direct deterrence is effort to prevent attack on its own territory. Okay. So that you make him, like what you did at Yangtze. He came, you stopped him, and he went back. It's a direct deterrence. You deployed there, so he cannot attack you where you're deployed. Now we'll talk of extended deterrence. Extended deterrence is something like what we do for Bhutan, Doklam. It is discouraging attacks on third parties such as allies or partners. So in Doklam, what happened? China went into Doklam, which is in Bhutanese territory. But you went there and discouraged him from going further and you pushed him back. The same thing you people have done when you created this firing range in Mandala Heights. So what happened? One of the operational plans of China, but that's quite apparent. It's not a great secret, right? Is that they want to come to Sakting because they've already laid claim on Sakting. Maybe they'll do a heli drop or an air drop on Sakting and then outflank complete Faidu and Kawang tract. Okay. Now, the moment you put guns out there in Mandala as in the firing range and you have the reach up to Sakting, you've done extended deterrence. You deterred him to get into Sakting, which is in Bhutanese territory. Extended deterrence is more challenging than direct deterrence because you have to think out of the box to do something new. Our action at Doklam was also out of the box. Our action at Mandala field firing ranges. I don't know whether you people did it as a matter of extended deterrence or not. But what I'm trying to tell you, which I told you at the beginning, is I am coming from ground to theory. It's not theory to ground, or even you could call it theory to ground. So you have to think what you're doing. Okay, you have to convince a potential aggressor that the third party defender will definitely respond to an attack, or at least as promptly as it can in the case of attack on a partner. In our case, you should tell them you enter Nepal, you enter Bhutan, you will see our reactions. For us, even that Nepal thing is important. Or for that matter, Myanmar and Bangladesh. You deter them. Okay, it includes actions like stationing significant number of troops from the deterring state or territory. Okay, that means you can put troops there. To a large extent, IMTRAT, which has been there for so long, right, in Bhutan, is part of deterrence in a larger sense. Okay, the defender seeks to create the perception that it has, in effect, no choice but to respond if its ally is attacked. So you tell China, you attack Bhutan and I'll attack you somewhere else. So you take your friend or your ally, your third party, as part of your defensive plans or your offensive plans or your military plans, whichever way you call it. Right. Then there's this issue of general deterrence and immediate deterrence. General deterrence is ongoing and persistent. Your deployment, your exercises, your equipment, your training, your performance in UN, you're judged. Let me tell you something which is, many of you would have gone to UN. You would have seen the Chinese behavior there. You've seen your own behavior. There are very clear indications that the Chinese have abandoned posts and run away in tough times in the UN matrix. On the other hand, the Indian troops are respected. I've never seen a UN commander say the Indian troops have performed badly. But there are many actual reports where the Chinese have run away. So there is a perceptional view about Indian troops and Indian battalions and Indian observers vis-a-vis the Chinese. So that creates its own deterrence. That's part of general deterrence. It's ongoing and persistent. Psychologically, that fellow knows that India is a tough nut to crack. Okay. And it has It prevents unwanted action over the long term and in non-crisis situations. That's general. So your reputation as an army, navy, air force. Look, the Chinese might be talking anything. Anyone might be saying anything that ours is a weak force. We don't know maintenance. We are unparty, all that nonsense. But let me tell you, so are they. They're in a worse state than you are, actually. They're very conscript army. Every 2 years they change. They're changing so much equipment every day. You just imagine, if I give you two new equipment tomorrow, how difficult it is for you to train and fight. For them, it's going ongoing. The changes, their commanders keep getting sacked left, right, and center. Okay, there's a very unstable system. You might feel they're a tough army, but you look at that from their point of view. They know their inner story, and they see a very confident army sitting across the LAC. They come and try something against you because of a political compulsion, not with full this thing. Yeah, they will do their tactics, everything. At local places, they'll get the best troops to do those small actions. That's fine. But you are deterring them. Then there's this immediate deterrence. Immediate deterrence is what you do on the spot. It is short term. There are urgent attempts to prevent a specific or an imminent attack, and it is crisis response. Like what happened again in Yangtze only. You knew something was coming. Whoever the battalion commander, they responded, did reinforcements, and as a crisis response, he altered the balance, and it was immediate deterrence. Okay. And then this business of narrow deterrence and broad deterrence. Narrow deterrence is by using one or only two types of deterrence. Okay, you just use military option, or use only economic deterrence, or sanctions, or one or two. Broad deterrence is you do it across the board. Okay, we are now in the stage of something like broad deterrence with China. Diplomatically, you're deterring him economically, you're deterring him militarily, right? You're deterring him from entering Bhutan. So all kinds of deterrence. If you think it, we are not doing it, we are doing it. Okay, then there's this thing called contact deterrence. Contact deterrence is by physical contact, raids, land grabs, attacks, and all that. And then there's non-contact, is by indirect methods, largely firepower and demonstrations. When you do a demonstration, you do firing, and you publicize it, it is non-contact deterrence. You're telling him, look, I can do all this. One thing with China is he's managed to put in a huge amount of non-contact deterrence by magnifying his missile force. And if you analyze his missile force, he might not be that effective against us on our side. In any case, his air force is useless. That's a different story. Okay? And his air force has been useless ever since I've seen the LAC in the first time. And that was way back in the 80s. Oh, incidentally, I've been on the LAC right from Karakoram, Demchok, Chushul, even this Galwan area when I was serving in Karu. And then I served in 9-Endep Mountain Brigade, which is Lekapani. No, not Lekapani, but Lipulek Pass area along the Kali River. Then Sikkim, been to Bhutan, Paidev, and also Kibitu. So I've seen the LAC at almost all points. Okay. Now, one important thing about the deterrence is you need credibility. They say credibility is the magic ingredient of deterrence, and credibility about having military capability and the political will to use it is important. You need to be credible, and this must be signaled and communicated unambiguously to the adversary. He should know what he's getting, and we've done it. It's not as if India as a nation has not done it. We've done it. It must be demonstrated by execution so that the adversary can unmistakably understand what is in store for him. And this is where we need to do a lot more. You don't have to be too aggressive, but you can be quiet and confident and say, yeah, you try this, I'll sort you out. Right? Yeah. And in the Sino-Indian situation, our credibility signaling must be more nuanced. The Chinese are nuanced in the way they do things. And you need to have a lot of capability development deployment and exhibition and all that we need to do because there's a lot more to go. It's not that just because I've said we are better than the Chinese, it's not always so. You need to have you have a long way to go. Right. You need to also have the political and financial intent to undertake such an exercise, and that's the first step. Military discussion and debate are also stepping stones in the process of credibility. Because it's unless you do this discussion and debate, you will not have the mental clarity to undertake deterrence the way you want to do it. Right. Then there's the issue of local superiority. Credible deterrence demands local superiority. So it comes down to the LAC in your case, your gun densities in your case. You have to build local superiority, which means a lot of movement, a lot of reinforcement, sidestepping, time and space. That's where the action starts at your end. Right? Local superiority also leads to credible effect and outcomes. And we have done it many times. In the Sino-Indian context, it will be important to build local superiority. Sensitive targets, you must have the capability to engage at the right time decisively. So that means you need surveillance across. Non-linearity and simultaneity will be the key to achieving local superiority. I'll not go into non-linearity and simultaneity. I'm sure your commander of 5RT Brigade will be able to explain all that to you, because this is something which you have to start thinking very deeply. And non-linearity and simultaneity is the crux of non-contact deterrence. Non-contact conventional deterrence. Right. Last point. Effective deterrence is not about winning, but raising the cost of victory for the aggressor to an unacceptable level. That's when he understands that the cost is too much and I have to go back. That's what we did when we occupied Kailash Range. You need precision capability. Very important. How you do precision it's not necessary only by, precision guided equipment. Precision can be through a good OP officer. The root capability of non-contact conventional deterrence is precision. It enhances credibility, promotes concentration, and ensures economy of effort. Precision capability combined with range contributes to effective standoff. And this here you need a lot of technology. And if you guys have ideas on technology, you're welcome. Talk with me anytime you want. I'm in this business through IIT. And this is what occupies me and my team here. How do I get precision capability in extended range to the army? This is one of my key areas of research in IIT, which I took after I retired as a DGRT. Right? It's not that I have any technical capability. I'm still an ex-NDA without any further degree after the BSc in NDA. But I use what I have to get my team, which is a very high-profile team, in terms of technical capability to get us for the Indian Army. It also minimizes undue collateral damage. That goes without saying. The three fundamental conditions for successful deterrence: level of aggressor motivation. You have to be motivated to deter. You need to have clarity about the object of deterrence and actions that the defender will take as to what is being deterred, what to do if the threat is ignored. If that fellow ignores, what will you do? You should have a response capability. You should push it through. If you are ambiguous in your deterrence, you will fail. करूंगा नहीं करूंगा, you will fail. कर सकते हैं सर, आप कैसे जाओगे? सर लेफ्ट से भी जा सकता हूँ, राइट से भी जा सकता हूँ, तो कहीं नहीं जाओगे. ठीक है, you decide either you go to right or left or go straight, whatever it is. Okay. I mean, in the army, this is the normal thing. I still remember when I was a young officer, a lot of OP officers in the artillery used to say, "Hey, what's the correction you'll give?" He'll look around behind. Sir, I'll give, drop 100 or drop 50. So he doesn't know whether it's drop 100 or drop 50 till someone says, "Oh, give drop 50." So yes, sir, I'll do drop 50, sir. So that's the way it is. You can't be indecisive. And the aggressor must be confident that deterring state has capability and will to carry out threats. So capability and will. If you convey the capability and will to the other state, you have deterred him. Right. I have written an article. This is the reference I am giving you. Okay. On non-contact conventional deterrence. You go through this. This is my website. And I wrote this article about 3-4 years back. This is only part of what I've spoken. The other one which I want to give you is this a RAND document. A combination of this link and the other one is what deterrence is all about.